Hello and welcome to ISRL Esports. So happy you could be joining us today for what is going to be a very exciting event. It is ISRL against CRL, the ISRL versus the Cone Racing League, and we are just about to kick off our first short qualifying session here, and it's going to be a good one. Thank you so much once again for tuning in. I'm your host for the evening, Fallen Monkeys, joined by Dan or V8 Field, and I'm just going to check in like I like to do. Dan, how you doing today? Excited for this racing action?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be really interesting to see a league versus league bout. I've never commentated over a league versus league, so we'll see how these guys that are normally rivals on circuit in their respective leagues, how they take each other on and go head to head in these two 25% races. But first, of course, they've got to do the short qualifying session, 18 minutes. Who is on pole for the British Grand Prix?
Yep, it is going to be an exciting race for sure. Excited to see who's going to get pole position, who is going to take that advantage going into the first 25% race. Now, as you said, drivers that are normally rivals on track going to end up being teammates. I know from ISRL's side, we've got a few drivers from each tier just to spread the love out a little bit. So it'll be very exciting to see how they're all going to fare working together, competing against the other league. And I do expect to see a lot of teamwork that'll kick in from both sides, potentially in qualifying with the help of Slipstream. I'm thinking maybe along the hangar straight, but also during the course of the race, maybe to help build in some gaps. Feral Fury was leading the way for the ISRL team, went a little bit wide on his outlap, but we have Dragon on speed, Harv 11 outforced the CRL team along with Nole or Mivako, as some on the ISRL fan base are used to knowing him as. So I'll stick on board with Feral Fury, and now, I just want to check in, leading into the short qualifying, leading into Silverstone. Dan, what are some key talking points here around the track, along the racers, just anything in general that you can think of here?
Yeah, well, this is a high-octane, high-velocity circuit. 75% of it spent at full throttle. Feral Fury just coming through the Mayers and Beckett section as we speak, and this is probably the most famous part of the circuit, and well, it is almost completely flat out for the first part of it. You do have to slightly lift for Beckett, but a really famous part that everyone loves. Very easy to invalidate, though. For the drivers things, I don't know a lot of them. I do recognise some names on the ISRL side, like Sweet Crown and Sophia, and I've raced alongside them before, I believe, in other leagues. But yeah, a lot of these guys I don't know. If Feral
Oh
Fury
no!
has put it in the wall, just about to come onto his lap, and he's lost it at club.
Yeah, I was about to say, Feral Fury, one of our Division One drivers, shows a lot of pace, at least from what we see in the in our actual ISRL League events. But unfortunately, out of club, a very tricky corner. You're trying to maximize the power as much as you can on the exit, especially to set yourself up for a flying lap. But I think for Feral Fury, just maybe got a little bit too excited on that power on the exit, losing it, and that wall comes at you very quickly if you're not careful. And I think that was the case. And unfortunately for Phil Fury, that's going to be potentially a back of the grid start. So really, his work cut out for him leading into the race, as he's not able to get a time on the board. But here I'll switch over to Nole Mivako on a flying lap, coming down the old start finish straight through Cop's corner now, approaching Maggots and Beckett's, and we'll have to see. We've got some CRL drivers ahead, so they're going to be setting the initial time, I think. But we'll see how the ISRL drivers fare here as they're coming on board, and the times are going to start to fall with just a few corners to go as he's coming down the hangar straight into Stowe. And I'm excited to see Nole, one of our Division 2 drivers, the champion of Division 3 in Season 3, but has shown a lot of pace, has shown that Division 2 really isn't phasing him all that much, very high up in the championship. And you can see why, setting a 125.3 as his first time, but it's CRL Harv leading the way with a 124.9, so already times breaking into the 124s here in this short qualifying session.
It's a very respectable from all drivers who have put in a lap, especially on the mediums for Harvard. It's a very strong time. I believe we've got one of the ISRL drivers just in their third sector at the moment. It's Welsh Malnardo, and I don't know too much about the drivers and what divisions they are in, but he's looking pretty strong on a set of mediums on this lap. Nonetheless, he's just about to come through the Vale chicane and now coming through Club Corner this is, to cross the line to set his first time. 25.1 on that set of the yellow medium tyres. Very respectable time. There's a couple more drivers for ISRL also coming through the third sector, but this is looking like a really even bout for both these teams.
It is definitely looking even. We've got a bit of a barber pole going on in the timing tables. CRL, ISRL, CRL, ISRL, the top four. And I'm sure it's going to end up being more the same looking at the pace. Now, Welsh Maldonado, just to let you know a little bit here moving forward, she was a Division 3 driver, but just showed so much pace in Division 3, we just had to bring her up to Division 2. But due to some schoolwork, real-life events, having to take a reserve role, but still she shows a lot of pace, leading the ISRL side of the timing tables with that 125.1, so showing a lot of pace on the medium tires as well. So potentially able to go faster later in the session once we start seeing more soft tire times falling. But still, only only three of the three drivers from each team, having set a time, or four from the CRL drivers. Let's jump on board with Sweet Crown 19. He is three-time defending Division 1 ISRL championship, but so far this year hasn't had the season we're used to seeing. A lot more challengers in the actual league, but still has a lot of pace on those medium tires coming through the end of Sector 1. We'll see what the three-time Division 1 ISRL champion can show on his first lap time of the session.
He's looking pretty decent through the first sector, just about to come through onto the national pit straight. Of course, they used to start the races on the old layout of the circuit, and it was a bit touch and go with the cut on Cops, but he has luckily gotten away with that one. Coming through now, Maggots and Beckett. Sweet Crown going to want to take this nice and tidily. You can see, I believe he might be on automatic gears from what I remember, but it is a 101.7 through the second sector, and I do believe this could be quick enough to potentially challenge for that top place. Of course, the front row locked out by CRL at the moment. Well, Sweet Crown could have something to say about this now through the Vale chicane to finish up on his lap. Just bringing it out, opening up the steering through Club Corner now to cross the line. Well, and he seemed like he lost a little bit in that final sector, but a 25.0, that is a cracking start for the mediums.
Yeah, very fast lap from Sweet Crown 19. It was good enough at the time to put him into P4, or into P3, I should say. But immediately as the time was set, right behind CRL Dewell, setting an absolute flyer of a lap. It's a 124.7, which is the new fastest lap. So not only so far is it a front row lockout from CRL, it's actually a top 3 lockout from the orange and black CRL rockin' liveried cars and their drivers. So still 10 minutes to go in qualifying, but at least as far as I can see for now, it's looking to be advantage CRL, with ISRL following behind, taking positions 4 through 7 in the timing table so far.
It seems like at the sharp end, whilst it is very much heavily dominated by the CRL side, the times are still very close, and you do have to take into consideration that Dewell has put that time in on a set of soft compounder tyres, so he's not too much quicker than the drivers in front, but well, AJ Wuhan, if I'm saying that one correct, he's only about half a tenth quicker than Sweet Crown at the moment, so it does not seem like all hope is lost as well, Alex has just rejoined the session. Hopefully he's not going to have some looming issues with his internet in this one. I do believe we've got a couple ISRL drivers on runs. I believe Noel is one of them.
Yeah, looking. I've been riding with F1 Richie personally on the soft tires, but we'll keep an eye out on Noel as well, or Mivako as I'm calling him. Actually sets a purple first sector, looking to be much faster, 3/10 faster than his first time around. So already looking to be near on 125 flat pace. Now, of course, those who are familiar with the ISRL streams know the likes of Du Will and AJ Wuhan. They've both raced. Du Will races in Division 1. AJ Wuhan races Division 2, but also gets a call up more often than not to our Division 1 race as well. So they are drivers from the CRL side that have a lot of pace, and we've seen the pace time and time again over the course of the ISRL League races that we've had thus far. But it is curious to have or not curious, but interesting to see them for the other team. Not necessarily the guys we're cheering for too much on our stream here. But there we go. That was Mivako setting the first ISRL time in the 124s. It's a 124.926 and takes that provisional P2, so breaks off the CRL 1-2 for the time being, as we see an ISRL driver near closer to the top of the timing tables, and that was a time on the soft tires.
Yeah, we're starting to see a lot of drivers take off their set of medium compound tyres and exchange it for a set of the softs because, of course, they just wanted to do a short banker run. Oh, there's a car off at Cop's Corner, and that is unfortunately one of the ISRL drivers. That is Potgeiter, if I'm saying that one correctly. Doesn't seem like he's got any damage on that car, but yeah, 7 minutes to go. He still can get back and do another run, but yeah, it's probably not ideal to be spinning out the car. As we've seen another driver go to the top, Harvey's actually spun, finishing up his lap.
Oh, so almost he was able to cross the line, going to the top, but I guess finishing that lap in style, you could say, as he takes that half spin right on the exit of Club. I've been riding with Nathan JB on Team CRL to see what his first time can be, and it's very much a flyer of a lap. It's a 124.2. So here with the drivers now opting to start putting on those soft tires, you're really seeing the times starting to fall, getting closer and closer to the 124 flats. Lots more times in the low 124s rather than the 125s like we've seen earlier. But so far, it looks like a lot of the quicker times are being dominated by the CRL side of things. But a lot of ISRL drivers out on their flying laps. I think that is Jordan, who's coming or about to come through Maggots and Beckett's on a flying lap. Hasn't had a time on the board. Is one of our Division 2 drivers. So has shown a lot of pace. Hasn't necessarily had the season that he was hoping for. Has been a little bit unlucky. But we'll see, has shown a lot of pace over the course of Season 4, and we'll see if he can get that lap together here at Silverstone with a little under 6 minutes to go in qualifying. So time is ticking down. If you're the likes of Potgetter, like we mentioned earlier, taking a spin, has enough time as Jordan crosses the line. P11, so just outside of the top 10. It's 125.2, so maybe a little bit more time to find in his lap time, as that's CRL Ferg actually going fastest now with a near 124 flat. It's a 124.072. So very quick times from the CRL team, and Ferg specifically, as we know, we've seen Ferg in Division 1, we've seen him compete with some of the top drivers and really bringing that pace over here to the league versus league event.
Yeah, we did just see a time coming from Sofia, managing to put it into fourth alongside Welsh Maldonado, who is in fifth at the moment. As more CRL drivers cross the line, we do have a Sweet Crown, the ace up ISRL's sleeve, so to say. He's just about to come through Club Corner now. He's improving pretty nicely on this lap, home good enough for fifth position. 24.4, it's a very good time though, but I think you probably want to be a little bit further up into that top five, as more drivers seemingly finishing on a lap. Welsh Maldonado doesn't seem like they are pushing at this point. I'm just trying to see, there's one car who's in the third sector at the moment. Oh, it is Noel, who's actually on an out lap. Doesn't seem like too many drivers are on a push lap at the moment, aside from Nude Potato for the ISRL team. So yeah, they're all just really at this point, if they're in the pits, they're going to be gearing up for their final laps here.
Yeah, really, that's the thing. A lot of them are on their in laps. They had just set their timed laps and looking to put on that last set of tires. Get out probably around, I would say, the 2.5, 2 minute mark once the track is at its quickest. And I did jump over to Irish Newt Potato to see what he could do. Unfortunately, that's an invalidation through Maggots and Beckett's, so that lap isn't going to count. And I feel, especially here around Silverstone, Dan, maybe your experience may vary, but from a lot of the races I've seen, a lot of the races I've commentated on as well, track limits always seem to be a bit of an issue here around Silverstone. As I switch over to Tobes, and as well, that's another invalidated lap due to track limits. And this could bring up some shifting, probably closer to the race, I would think, as you'll start seeing these time penalties start to fall, and that could really affect the rankings near the end of the race. So I do think some of the drivers are going to have to really focus on keeping it clean, especially in the race. You want to push those track limits, but you don't want to push them too much and get penalized for it, because that's a really easy way to lose out on a lap, lose out on some positions, especially with the times being oh so close as they are this late in qualifying. A 3-second time penalty here and there could really make the difference come the end of the race, I would have to say.
Absolutely, it's very difficult to maintain a good level of pace around here and keep track limits, especially through that second sector where it is very reliant on the downforce to really just control the car and keep it on the circuit. We will see a lot of invalidations coming out through there. We do have one ISRL driver on a lap at the moment, and that is Richie. He's the slowest of the drivers who have put in a time at this point. He's in 16th position on a 25.6, so he's got time to make up if he wants to be pushing up into the further positions. He's about to come through Cop's corner now, flat out right-hander, easy to invalidate if you just run a little bit too wide, but he's kept that nice and tidy in towards the infamous Maggots and Beckett's, flat out through here, and then just shifting it down into 7th and losing a little bit more speed through here, just brushing the grass. That could have hurt a little bit of his time. He's 3/10 up. If he does find maybe a 10th or 2 through the second sector, he could see himself, through his final sector, he could see himself maybe pushing into the reaches of the top 10, or certainly just above it, where he could have the alternate strategy in his favour. But with 1 minute 20 seconds to go, we'll see him cross the line for most likely his final lap in this session, and it's going to be unfortunately quick, not close enough to jump anybody, but he does improve. 25.3.
Yeah, a bit of a disappointing lap time from F1 Richie. I know as far as, if time trial pace is anything to go against, I know he can time trial around a 1:24.9. So I think there was potentially a little bit more in the tank for F1 Richie on that lap, but unfortunately just not on the pace here with his qualifying pace. But I do know, racing alongside F1 Richie in the Division 3 Championship, he's got a lot more pace as far as his race pace is concerned. So I would expect him to, I would keep an eye out on F1 Richie as the race plays along, and that might be where we start seeing a little bit of that F1 Richie magic that I've grown accustomed to seeing over our races. But now, lots of drivers now, as we're down to the last 15 seconds of qualifying, going out for their final laps. Let's see, who's leading the way? I think it's Nick Potgetter who's leading the way. Going to have to be perfect here as he doesn't have a time on the board. And right as I say that, it's a commentator's curse, and that's an invalidated lap from Potgetter. So unfortunately, that's going to be another ISRL driver starting from the back of the grid, as there's definitely not enough time to get a time on the board now for one last lap, as qualifying has just ended. So a bit of a disappointing qualifying for Potgetter as well, and it's going to be a bit of a recovery drive for him once we jump into that 25% race. But I've switched over to Jordan, the next lead runner for ISRL, on a flying lap, looking to go faster. Didn't quite get to see the Sector 2 time. Dan, I'm not too sure if you caught that or not, if it's looking to be a quicker lap or not. But here through the last few corners, we'll see if he can improve. And that's another invalidation for Jordan on the final few corners, so that lap isn't going to count. And he's going to remain in 14th position for the time being, as a bit of a disappointing qualifying for Jordan. You could see with the moving of the car, he was not happy with the way that lap ended. Irish Newt Potato crosses the line. He goes up into 8th, as that's his final time ending. Lots of drivers jumping into the pits. It looks like Sophion is about to finish a lap, and right ahead of him, it's Sweet Crown 19 who's about to end a lap. Where's it going to put him? Up into 2nd for Sweet Crown 19, so there's some of that pace we're used to seeing. And Sophion crosses the line, comes in 5th. And through that, I think that's just about going to do it for qualifying. As yes, we have Harv in the pits, Real DC also jumping into the pits, not finishing his lap. But it is going to be Nathan JB starting on pole, going what looks to be maybe about 1/100th, 1.5 hundredths faster than Sweet Crown 19, who qualified in P2. So a bit of a split start on the starting grid. CRL in first, ISRL in second, but that is the end of qualifying.
Yeah, so the results are on your screen. You can see Sweet Crown actually just went 1/1000th of a second quicker than Ferg, who does take up third position. It's a nice field spread we've got here. It looked like it was heavily CRL dominated, but then a couple of the ISRL boys did manage to put it up the grid, like Sweet Crown and Sophie, and they did very, very well to put it into the top 5, as well as Welsh Maldonado and New Potato, both of them locking up the 4th row of the grid. So this could be a very, very close race for both of these leagues. It's just all about race trim now. You got to forget qualifying, and you got to perform like that in the race.
Yep, that's exactly it. Qualifying is over and done with. We are not going back. So now it is time, if you're a driver, if you're watching at home, to switch into that race mindset mentality, as we are jumping into our first of 2 25% races, the first of which is going to be here at Silverstone, and then of course we are going to have a reverse grid 25% race around Abu Dhabi for race 2, so tons more racing action left to go, so don't go anywhere, as we are about to kick off the race in just a few moments. Now, I know it's something that a lot of both leagues do like to do. Taking a little bit of a breather between qualifying and the first race allows the drivers to get their setups up and ready to go. But right as I say that, Welsh Maldonado, she's ready to go. She's got her setup. She's got her tire choice ready. And we are going to kick things off with the formation lap, followed by the 5 red lights in the start of the race in about 15 seconds or so. And well, it'll be curious to see, especially what the bottom 10 are going to do in terms of tire choice. Given that there's not much tire degradation here around Silverstone, but some might look to try to push that one-stop mediums to soft reverse strategy. But we'll see with the formation lap what everybody is doing. I'll take us through the grid one last time. So it is Nathan JB starting on pole for Team CRL, with Sweet Crown 19 qualifying in second on the front row of the grid right alongside him. Row 2 is occupied by CRL Ferg and CRL AJ Wuhan. Then we've got Sophion in 5th, Harv in 6th, Welsh Maldonado in 7th, and her teammate Irish Newt Potato qualified in 8th for the ISRL team. CRL Dual in 9th, and Dragon on Speed for Team CRL, rounding out positions 9 and 10 on the grid. Now, free choice of tires, we have CRL, the Real DC, in 11th, starting on the medium, so looking at that reverse strategy, along with ISRL Nole or Mivako also putting on those medium tires. Alex TG putting in 13th, so it looks like he got those connection issues resolved from earlier, starting on the medium tires in 13th, with Jordan in 14th for Team ISRL on the mediums, and Toby's as well on the medium tires for Team CRL. F1 Richie looking to start on the soft tires for Team ISRL, so expect a bit of a jump from him compared to everybody else around being on that quicker tire, with Potgetter and Feral Fury rounding out the last row of the grid for Team ISRL, both opting for the medium tires. So leading in, what do you think we can expect to see going into this first race, Dan?
Well, it is hard to tell, but of course only 13 laps I wouldn't expect any drivers to be utilising the hards at all in this race. It's probably going to be a straight soft to medium or medium soft if you have opted to start on the medium. Speaking of which, we do have to watch out for the drivers on the mediums, especially guys like DC and Nole, who are right up the front of the, I believe some people call it the poor man's pole position, when you're starting in 11th, because you get the free choice of tyres and you're just outside the top 10. So those guys are going to be very, very deadly coming into this one. But it is CRL on pole just alongside ISRL. It's going to be a cracker of a race.
It definitely will be. And we are going to kick things off in just a few moments. 13 laps around Silverstone for the British Grand Prix. It is race 1 out of 2 for the ISRL versus CRL Championship battle event. And here we go. Get ready. We are just awaiting for these 5 red lights. Up to 2, 3, 4, 5 red lights. And they're off, and we are racing. And off the restart, it looks like it's a pretty good start from Nathan JB. Sweetcrown 19 trying to go around the inside, but it looks as though we've got some drivers going wide through the first few corners. I think that might have been Sophion having a little bit of a moment, a little bit of a shuffling in the back, as it's still Nathan JB leading the way, and that's Ferg who gets ahead. We have a yellow flag further down the grid. I'm not too sure what that was for, as everybody's battling it out for position coming down the first of what is normally 2 DRS straights. We had 3 wide here as Welsh Maldonado going down the inside of 2 CRL drivers to go up into P5, and now right behind some ISRL teammates for a little bit of security. But right now, CRL 1-2, ISRL 3-5, and then a big horde of CRL cars taking position 6 through 11. As further down, Toby's and that's Jordan actually having a moment through cops. And that brought out a yellow flag. Doesn't look like there's damage, but a lot of positions lost for Jordan, as that's a very costly mistake early on here in this race.
Yeah, it just looks like a slight bit of wing damage on the right side end plate to Jordan's car. Same damage coming off of Richie. I believe all the carnage really started from New Potato just getting a little bit too ambitious on the brakes and actually touching the back of Welsh Maldonado, completely turning him into a spin, and then it was just a collection, a bit of damage coming off from everyone there. Jordan and Richie, both of them suffering wing damage, pitting very, very early, so it's looking like it is advantage towards CRL coming into this one. Beginning lap number 2, it says lap 3 at the top, and they say they fixed that issue, but that is not true whatsoever, so I do thank Codemasters for that one. There's a bit of a timing glitch just going on right now, but that should all fix itself whilst they cross into the second sector. I believe intervals do get a little bit glitched in this time period as well, but yeah, it's been a really good start for the CRL drivers, locking out the 1 and 2 position, but Sweetcrown still behind them, keeping touch in 3rd position, so all Sweetcrown has to do is just pick up DRS and try and pit by 1.
Yep, so we'll have to see how this is going to play out in terms of the battle for the lead. Like you said, Sweetcrown 19 really keeping up with the top 2, and to be fair, so is Sophion and Welsh Maldonado. They're doing a good job, at least trying to stay within that 1 second. But Welsh Maldonado is starting to see a little bit of pressure from AJ Wuhan, who's now coming down the inside into Stowe. A nice little side-by-side battle here between these 2 drivers, approaching the final few corners. They're still side-by-side, but it looks as though AJ Wuhan does finally get ahead to go up into P5, but Welsh Maldonado fighting right back. Is she gonna try to make a move into turn 1? No, just not able to close up enough. That door just shutting down, but gonna have to be a little bit perfect here, as now we've got Harv coming down the inside, turning into the outside, so Harv having to go the long way around. So Welsh Maldonado finding that traction to keep that position for the time being. But now as DRS is activating, it looks as though potentially it might be advantage towards Harv. But no, I thought AJ would have kicked out to try to give his teammate a little bit of a tow down that back straight. but it is still a battle between Welsh Maldonado and Harv, as they're still going side by side through another set of corners, and this could get dangerous leading into Cops in just a few moments now. It is Harv who gets ahead, only barely, as I think Harv just kept on the throttle a little bit more, had a slight better line, as he is able to get that P6. Welsh Maldonado falling down into 7th, and I think now this battle is going to end up on a little bit of a pause, as meanwhile it looks like Toby's had a bit of a moment through Magus and Beckett's falling down the order a little bit, so going to have a little bit of catch-up work to ahead of him before he can get back and try to get some overtakes done.
That was a really great battle that we saw coming out, as DC already into the pit lane on the set of Meatloads coming to the pits very, very early. Might try and take the softs to the end of the race. That is very ambitious, but I do think it might just about be doable. There's a little bit of a gap forming between the top 4 and the rest of the drivers behind, of course, with all that fighting for P5 with Welsh Maldonado, AJ Wuhan and Harv both lost out on quite a lot of time. But coming in towards Brooklands, the top 3 closing up together. They just can't get close enough to fight. Can Sweet Crown as a New Potato overtaking Feral Fury? I'd assume that is really a strategical move from the ISRL team, because they don't want to be fighting each other too hard. They want to gang up on Alex at the moment, and actually Potato could maybe try for a move coming in towards the Stowe corner, I'd think, because he's a little bit too far back to go for it in towards Cops. But what about Magus and Beckett? He's got to rely on a good run. The dirty air really going to be hampering his downforce and really capability to run as quick as he can through here. But it's been a really good run for New Potato, and opening up the DRS, that is going to be the move up the inside in towards Stone. This will be breezing right past as Sweet Crown gets so close to the back of Nathan. They are heating it up here, beginning lap number 5.
Yeah, very nice move from Irish New Potato going down the inside of Alex, really seeing that wider, not as great exit from Alex through the final portion of Beckett's leading into Chapel, taking full advantage, optimizing that line, getting the better run, and using that DRS to seal it home. To get the overtake done. Now Sweet Crown 19 still trying to chase down Nathan, JB, and Ferg, who have switched positions first and second. It was Nathan leading the way, and now I think it's time to let Ferg lead, and Nathan now can do the trailing, just trying to fight and keep Sweet Crown 19 behind. And it is a little bit of a trend, a bit of a key here that you're seeing, similar to what you would see in real-life Formula 1. It pays to have that second car between your rival and the leader, because then it allows the lead car to just focus on the race ahead and leave what's behind to the trailing car. So Ferg can kind of run away or try to run away as best as he can, and leave a lot of the fighting Nathan, JB, where even if the fighting doesn't prove to be all that amazing, it at least does slow down the driver behind and helps create that gap between him and the leaders. So maybe a little bit of strategy play could be seen, but it is something we might be seeing with the likes of Sweet Crown and Sophion, as they're just trying to keep back. Sophion still has a lot of ERS to work with, so definitely not out of this battle yet, as much as the gap appears to be growing ever so slightly between himself and Sweet Crown. Oh, so Sweet Crown having a big lockup into turn 3, really having to slow that car down to not run into the back of Nathan, but keeping close, just not close enough to get some overtakes, as it looks as though the CRL drivers are just having slight better exits, at least in this stage of the Silverstone race.
Yeah, this is a trend that you will see. The DRS train coming into fruition, so Ferg's probably going to try and just allow Nathan to stick in his DRS, keep a healthy gap so as to not hamper him too much with the dirty air, but Sweet Crown not going to be able to get close enough to try for a move, so he's really got to rely on a mistake coming up. Maybe he could attempt an undercut. You are in your pit window at this point, so he could potentially try and just pit before these guys and see if they can see if he can jump them maybe just get in between them and then take the fight to them. But we'll see, maybe if they do pull into the pit lane. Ferg going to come in, Nathan going to come in, Sweet Crown and Sophian both going to stay out. Welsh Maldonado, she's decided she wants to come into the pit lane. It is a lottery. She's picked up a 5-second time penalty for speeding in the pit lane, but it is, as I was saying, it is a lottery as to where your pit box is, because you have no set teammates in this race, so it is possible to stack behind a driver without even knowing that you would have, and I think that might have actually been the case for Welsh Maldonado, because she's lost a whole amount of time. Unless she was serving a 5-second time penalty, I don't think so, but she's lost the position to Dragon on speed when she was definitely ahead of him at that point.
Oh no, and that's the thing. I know there is a bit of a science behind getting those pit boxes with your teammates. I think it's the way you enter the I think it's the order in which you enter the lobby that does determine that. So there was that science, at least on one aspect of it. But on the other hand, it's really tough to keep track when you're joining in to figure out who you're going to be teammates with. So, like you said, definitely a lottery for the most part. But it looks as though, but unfortunately for Welsh Maldonado, did not win that lottery. As he mentioned, did get held up. I don't think she had a 5-second penalty previous to that. So potentially just a slow pit stop, having to double stack behind her teammate. As I think we saw Newt Potato, or it could have been one of the CRL teammates. And here we see the leaders of the race, or the temporary leaders, Sweet Crown 19 and Sophian, taking their pit stops. Now, if I switch over to Ferg here, who's now leading the way, as the top 4 have taken their pit stop, and top 5 actually for that matter, we'll have to see where are the likes of Sweet Crown and Sophian going to come out in comparison to Ferg and Nathan. It looks as though they might just be leaving the pit box now, so it's going to be close on the exit who is going to be in the lead of the race. At least initially, it looks like it might still be the CRL drivers, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than what it was previously, as now you're seeing on your mini-map, and I think that was Sweet Crown 19 who gets right between the CRL drivers of Ferg and Nathan JB, so we're back to the barber pole for positions 1, 2, 3, and 4, and this is now where the fight can truly begin between the top 2 drivers, Ferg and Sweet Crown. But first, Sweet Crown is going to have to close up a bit of a gap and try to keep Nathan, who's very, very close behind, less than 3/10 last I saw, behind Sweet Crown. Gonna have to keep that driver back, and maybe rely on Sophian to do a little bit of battling as well to try to keep Nathan preoccupied, whilst all the while Sweet Crown can head towards and make a charge to the leader of the race to try to snag those points through there. But crucially, right behind, it's a bit of a wall of CRL drivers. It's AJ Wuhan, Harv, Real DC, and Duwill in positions 5 through 8, and then Welsh Maldonado behind in 9th for the ISRL team, with Dragon on speed rounding out the top 10. So, at least in this stage of the race, it is a bit of an advantage to CRL, given where the orders are as far as the timing tables are concerned.
So, interestingly enough, Sweet Crown managing to overcut Nathan, and one thing I've noticed is that now the CRL drivers of Ferg and Nathan both have really low ERS levels in comparison to what they had before, so I think they were pushing quite hard to try and assert a gap to Sweet Crown. It didn't work out for Nathan, but now 1.2 seconds between Ferg and Sweet Crown. If he can't pull that gap down, well, Nathan will be all over the back of him. You can see it's about 3/10 back at this point. Sweet Crown might try and push him into the back of Sophian, and Sophian going very deep in towards Brooklands, trying to just drink as much as he can, break as hard as he can, and as late to try and get close enough to Nathan, just to put him off maybe, even just to make him make a mistake and lose a position in the making as well. But he's 2.5 tenths back from the CRL driver, so this could be the turning point for ISRL to really get rid of that rival in between themselves and Ferg, and then utilise the slipstream to try and catch up to the leading car. But here comes Sophian down the straightaway. He's 2/10 back from Nathan. He's not using up any overtake, so I don't think he's going to make a send in towards Stowe, but possibly in towards the Vale chicane. Could be an overtaking opportunity if he's late enough onto the brake. Going to hang back for the time being. The French driver just staying behind the CRL driver of Nathan, but it was beginning lap number 10 here.
Yep, down to the final 3 laps, and it's getting very interesting. It's really heating up for the lead of the race. And I've been looking at the gaps, and it looks like Sweetcrown 19 doing a good job of slightly closing that gap up to Ferg, whilst equally trying to keep Nathan behind just enough to give Sophion, his teammate, a chance at pushing this overtake. But I do think there's a little bit of ERS management going on, maybe some fuel management as well for Sophion, as for now just comfortable in 4th. Maybe not looking to battle too much in this stage. Maybe leave it for another lap or 2 in the distance once it becomes a little bit too late to react to the move. But they're going to have to try to get a move on, because now that I'm looking at the gap, it's been between Ferg and Sweetcrown, it's just been sitting around 1.2 seconds. So I do have to give props to Ferg for his gap management through the course of this second stint, albeit short. Seeing a little bit of overtake being used by Sweetcrown to try to close that gap up down the hanger straight, but we'll see he's just over a second now, when realistically he's going to want to close it up a little bit more in the next few laps if he wants to try to make a push, especially to get it into the into DRS range, so he can really start putting pressure and really start trying to close that gap more than he already has. But it's still, for now, CRL by ISRL, then CRL, then ISRL. But even further down the order, we've got a few battles here. Dragon on Speed, down in 10th right now for Team CRL, trying to put a little bit of pressure on Welsh Maldonado, who's been holding on to P9 right now. The tire battle's a little bit similar, but Welsh Maldonado does still have that penalty that's going to go against her time of the first race, and actually has 8 seconds of time penalties for that. So penalties really hurting the ISRL team a little bit further down the field, as most of the penalties, other than 2, Toby's and Harv, all the penalties on your board that you see are for Team ISRL. So track limits, as I mentioned previously, seem to be a little bit of a struggle for the ISRL squad so far here in race 1.
Yeah, so Sweetcrown has just about picked up DRS and has dropped Nathan from DRS2, so this is going to give the advantage to the ISRL drivers. And you also do have to think about the next race in Abu Dhabi, where they will be utilising the reverse grid order. As actually Welsh Maldonado run to the back of Duwill, trying to put pressure on the ISRL driver for a crucial position. Granted, Welsh Maldonado does have 8 seconds of penalties, so they will regardless drop down the order. But Sweetcrown knocking in the fastest lap of the race, beginning lap number 12. He's now trying to apply the pressure to Ferg up ahead. He's let him have his fun at the front and is not charged. He's got DRS down the Wellington straight, and we'll see if he's able to get close enough to striking range in towards Stowe. But towards Brooklands, it's 6.5 tenths is the gap between the pair of them at the moment. That gap will continue to come down. It's whether Sofan can also pick up the crucial positions. So it does look a little bit bleak for ISRL at the moment, but of course Abu Dhabi could give them a new beacon of hope.
Yeah, especially with the reverse grid order that we're seeing. It'll be a lot of ISRL drivers starting near the front half of the grid for race 2. And of course, there is that old saying, it is much easier to defend a position than it is to try to overtake a position on track, especially at a track like Abu Dhabi, where other than, I would only say Sector 2, it's very difficult to overtake, but we're not quite there just yet. Sophion got oh so close to Nathan JB on the penultimate lap going into Stowe, and now going to try to make a lunge down the inside of the final few corners. Nathan does a good job getting on the traction, holding on to that P3, not going side by side through the final corner. But now as we start the final lap, this is where we're going to start seeing the drivers really pushing, really try to get those overtakes as much as they can. Nothing into turn 3 Keeping behind is Sophion, similar to Sweet Crown, trying to get DRS down the first of 2 DRS straights. Let's tune over. It is Sweet Crown 19 on your screen, chasing down CRL Ferg for the win here, for the P1. Right behind that was Sophion going down the inside, going a little bit deep, which does allow Nathan to come right back. But Sophion finds the traction when he needs to, gets that P3, but is going to have to watch out because with Nathan sticking oh so close behind, he might try to make a push either into Cops, not through Cops, but now on the exit of Magus, Beckus, and Chapel down the hangar straight. We might see a re-attempted overtake with the help of DRS, so Sophion going to have to pick his line very, very carefully, going to have a clean exit. And it's all going to come down to this for the final podium position, I think. Here comes Nathan JB. Sweet Crown 19 got oh so close, but not able to get the overtake done. Sophion, for now, holding Nathan behind. Seeing some battles here going into the final few corners. Let's see who's going to take it at the line. I think it is going to be Ferg who gets the victory from Sweet Crown 19 in second. And it's Sophion who crosses the line. So it's ISRL positions 2 and 3 on the podium, but it's CRL who takes the victory here on race 1. And looking at the order further down the grid, it is CRL drivers positions 4 through 10. So a bit of, other than the podium, a bit of a top 10 lockout from Team CRL, with ISRL coming for the most part in positions 11 through 18, as it's just the final few positions getting resolved. But it does mean that we're going to see a lot of ISRL drivers at the front of the grid for race 2 once we do move into that reverse grid start.
Yeah, it was a very tight race right towards the end from the front drivers, but really, you gotta say that is domination from CRL in Britain. 8 of the top 10 spots available were taken up by the orange cars, but it is Ferg coming out on top, 1/10 at the line, and you'd think that if there was one more lap, Sweet Crown could have been in with a chance of taking the position, but it just wasn't meant to be, and there wasn't that one extra lap. So it is going to go majority of the point back towards the CRL base. But of course, we got Abu Dhabi with a reverse grid, and a lot of those drivers who'll be starting right at the top of the field, right at the sharp end, will be ISRL drivers. So don't count them out just yet.
Oh no, definitely not, but at least for race 1, I'll take us through the grid one more time. It is CRL Ferg who takes the victory, Sweet Crown 19 in second, Sophion rounding out the podium in third. Then it's Nathan JB, AJ Wuhan, Harv 11, Real DC, Will, Dragon on Speed, and Alex TG taking up the rest of the positions from 4th through 10th. Then we have Feral Fury in 11th, Nude Potato in 12th, Welsh Maldonado in 13th, Nole in 14th, Jordan rounding out the top 15 with Toby's in 16th, Potgetter in 17th, and F1 Richie rounding out the order in P18. But don't go anywhere. It was a very exciting first race, but we are jumping into race 2 in a few moments. Once we get the grid order set, it is going to be a reverse grid start for race 2. We're going to be jumping right into it. No qualifying before this, and we just have to get a few moments just to get the grid order set up before we jump in to race 2. But like you mentioned, Dan, in race 1, it was a bit of a CRL dominance, occupying all but 2 positions within the top 10. But saying that, it is going to be here in race 2, I think, ISRL's chance at redemption, as they are going to occupy most of the top 10, as well as the front row that is going to be occupied by F1 Richie and Potgetter, who are going to be leading the charge in Abu Dhabi. Now, the other talking point too, at least as far as ISRL's garage goes, is that as far as the league is concerned, Abu Dhabi's the track next week. So I do feel as though a lot of the ISRL drivers probably put a lot of practice into this track, maybe a little bit more than they did in Silverstone, given that race has already been completed as far as the calendar is concerned. So I'd expect potentially an extra little bit of a jump in some of these racers' race cars or race boots, you could say, leading into the second race with the extra practice, with the extra laps having been done here around Abu Dhabi. But it is going to be very exciting to see how this is all going to play out, especially with the reverse grid order 25% race, where you're not going to have all that much time to get some overtaking done on track. And with no qualifying, you're almost going into the conditions a little bit blind, not having that feeling of how the track feels on race day like you would with the short qualifying session. So it's going to be interesting. No weather to play a factor, as I'm seeing. It is going to be clear. Not that we normally expect to see too much weather in Abu Dhabi, but that could have been a little bit hectic if we did see some rainy conditions.
Yeah, I'm just reading in the Discord chat in the ISRL server. There's a lot of sportsmanship actually going on. There's Ferg has added Sweet Crown. He's got a different name on Discord, but he said GG for that one. Of course, we saw the brilliant battle between AJ Wuhan and Welsh Maldonado, both of them thanking each other for the space. So it was a really great and clean race, and they're all taking this very lightly as well. There's really no conflict whatsoever, so you do have to applaud all the drivers regardless of how their finishes this race. But we've got to think about Abu Dhabi now. I believe Nathan's just putting in the grid at this point. It is a straight up reverse grid race, and we'll expect a lot of the ISRL guys at the top. I believe Richie will be the one on pole, then Potgeiter in second position, Tobes will be in third, fourth will be Jordan, fifth will be Nole, and sixth will be going to Welsh Maldonado after she took a lot of penalties in that race, 8 seconds to be exact. New Potato will be in seventh. Fury, he had a really good race to get up the order, just based on the fact that he lost it on his first lap. So really well done to him. 10th position will be going to, and I believe it's actually 8th position. So I have no clue. I've lost count where I am, but yeah, as you see it, the reverse grid order will be pretty much just the entire listing flipped around.
Yep, you had that right with Real Fury in 8th. Gets a little bit tricky with 18 drivers. It is the 9v9, so you had room for the commentators on both sides, so we can get both perspectives of the stream. But we'll be seeing, like you mentioned, Real Fury in 8th, and then it's going to be Alex and Dragon on Speed rounding out the top 10. Free choice of tires for everybody here. But I think we're probably going to get ready to go in just a few moments. Like you mentioned, once Nathan JB gets that gets that custom grid set up, we'll get the queue to jump into race 2. It's going to be a 25% race around Abu Dhabi, and it's definitely going to be a good one. Definitely, I would say Sector 2 is where we're going to see most of the overtaking happen. Those unfamiliar with the track, it's both of those very long, I'll call them the very long back straights of the track. Lots of room to get some slipstream, to get some tow, but could also open a little bit of something similar we saw in race 1, which is the DRS training. Which once we fall into that, it gets a little bit tough for drivers to get some overtakes, given they're all going top speed, but they're all going top speed against one another, which does make overtaking that much more difficult. But it is also where we could see setups come into play. I know some drivers prefer a bit more of a downforce type setup. Some drivers prefer a bit more of a top speed setup. Now, in your experience, Dan, if you were racing in here, what kind of setup would you be looking more towards? Would you be aiming top speed, or would you be aiming more towards downforce for Sector 3, Sector 1?
Oh, that's a tough question. I'm not too sure on how the setups really do work, but you do need quite a bit of top speed for the really main overtaking opportunities coming into, I believe, turn number 9 or turn 10, and then the second sector chicane. So it's going to be very split, I'd say, on, well, I guess balanced is the better way of putting it, where you do want that speed through the corners, but also just that little bit of extra top speed. So, yeah, these guys, they'll be expecting a pretty good race out of this one. I think Abu Dhabi it's a track that is sort of slept on a little bit. A lot of people don't really tend to enjoy it, and I certainly I'm not a fan of the final sector. I believe that is probably one of the worst parts of the entire game. But a lot of this track is actually quite fun to drive, like the first sector and like the chicanes. They are very tricky corners to completely nail, but yeah, it is a pretty fun circuit. And a lot of these guys, I'm sure, will have the same opinion. But Nathan did confirm about 3 minutes ago that race would start in 5 minutes, so we'll be going in about 2 minutes' time, and we'll be getting all the way for I think 13 laps of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix.
Yep, I believe so. Now, I do have to agree with you, with your point about Abu Dhabi being a bit of a track that a lot of drivers sleep upon. I know I myself, I have my very choice opinions on Abu Dhabi. I'm not really much of a fan, to be completely honest, at least as far as racing the track is concerned. Similar to yourself, Sector 3, I really do not like to drive. I do think it's probably one of the worst sectors so on the calendar, and it's not something I enjoy. Sector 2 is, is a fun sector, and Sector 1, especially right off the start-finish straight, the first few corners, turn the hard left into turn 1, and that kind of very high-speed right-hander leading into one of those stadium sections is a very fun section to drive, a very fun section to watch, especially off of the restart when or off the start, I should say, when you're going to have all 18 cars charging through, battling for position. It is going to be a sight to behold, and I'm excited to see how this is all going to play out once we do kick things off in potentially about a minute or two's time. Once we get that final cue to go, I'm already seeing some drivers getting that ready, hitting that green button to kick things off, and I know. I'm pretty sure everybody watching at home is excited to get Race 2 going. I'm getting excited to get Race 2 going to see how we are all going to fare. For those who are just tuning in, we've had Race 1 around Silverstone for the ISRL versus CRL League versus League event. The Race 1 didn't quite go the way ISRL was hoping for. The top 10, as you can see, was more or less dominated by the CRL drivers, other than positions 2 and 3, which did show ISRL on the podium. But leading into this reverse grid order start for Race 2, we'll see if ISRL can maybe even the table, snag some points in Race 2, and maybe eke out a win if we can pull off the, I'll be honest about it, I guess where we are now, that upset victory going into Race 2, going into Abu Dhabi. But all questions will be answered in a few moments. You see the timer on your screen. We are jumping into the race in about 5 seconds now. You get ready. It's going to be a good one, and I am very excited for it.
Yeah, so it's very uncommon that we do see rain around the Abu Dhabi circuit, so we are expecting it to be dry, but the game does occasionally like to just throw a little trick at us, and maybe we could see some wet running, but it is highly unlikely. We're just waiting for the drivers to ready up. They will have no wear on their tyres whatsoever, so I believe they probably do get to start on whatever tyres they want. Where that will remain to be seen, of course, once they get onto the formation lap. But yeah, coming into the lobby, they'll have about maybe a minute or so just to get their strategies ready and really work out with the team what they're going to be doing. But yeah, this will be a very, very interesting race, and it looks like it's nice and dry over the sunset.
Yep, very dry, nice and clear. I think I did get that little peak that to avoid some weather conflicts. I think they did just put in clear weather, at least for the second race, so no weather coming to effect. But it does mean the drivers can race at their quickest. We can see the pace that we've grown accustomed to seeing for these drivers, and it'll mean some hopefully some clean, exciting racing action. As you said, drivers gonna take a minute, get their setups ready, and this is a reminder, if you're a driver on the screen, don't forget your setups. You're gonna have a bad time if you're running on one of those preset setups here around Abu Dhabi. But it gets the setups ready, gets the tire strategy ready to go, and I do believe, like you were mentioning, drivers will get free choice of tires. It is a fresh set, so no wear on those tires. Feral Fury is ready to go. He's got his setup, he's got his strategy ready, and we will be kicking things off as the timer has been set. And once we do jump into that formation lap, we'll get a bit of a better idea as to what strategy a lot of the drivers are running. I would think, and correct me if I'm wrong, probably straightforward here. A soft to medium, I think, is probably going to be the strategy, or at least a medium to soft. But I've seen some drivers surprise me in the past before. But here we go. The one red light goes off. We are starting the formation lap, and it's going to be F1 Richie who's going to be leading the way for Team ISRL on the soft tires, with Nick Potgetter starting on the front row of the grid right alongside him, and he has opted to put on those medium tires. So looking to go a little bit longer from the lead, or from P2. So an interesting strategy call from Potgetter, and we'll have to see how that's going to play out for him if he can get that start that he needs on those mediums. Toby's in third on the softs, Jordan in fourth on the softs, Nole in fifth on the softs, Welsh Maldonado, Irish New Potato, Feral Fury taking positions 6 through 8 on the softs, and so is Alex TG for Team CRL on the soft tires. Then we've got Dragon on Speed and Do Will both putting on the medium tires here, so running that reverse strategy as well. Real DC on the softs, Harv on the mediums, AJ Wuhan on the softs, Nathan JB on the softs, and Sophion for Team ISRL putting on the soft tires. Sweet Crown 19 starting before last, putting on the medium tires, looking to go a little bit longer, and so is CRL Ferg for that matter on the medium tires, looking to go a little bit longer. So the race leaders, the race leaders for race 1, other than Sophion, have opted for the medium tires for the most part, but a lot at the front looking at the soft tires. Now I'm gonna ask your opinion on this as we're coming through into sector 3 in this formation lap. Which strategy do you think is the better one going into the race? Would you have run a soft to mediums or a mediums to soft?
I think the mediums to soft is probably the more ideal strategy, just because you will be on the fresher set of tyres at the end, on the softs of course, as well as you'll be lighter on fuel, so you actually be a lot quicker than the drivers who are on the softs at the beginning of the race. The pace should on paper be better, but well, the undercut coming out from the soft to medium runners is going to make it very difficult to really judge the strategy here, but they are pulling in to their grid slots. Richie on pole, Potgeiter in second, Tobes in third. He's in a sea of ISRL drivers, covering only one CRL driver in the top 8. So he's got to hold his nerve really throughout this race. But the last of the drivers pulling into their box, and we'll get underway for the second race in Abu Dhabi.
Yep, here we go. It is the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, 14 laps around Yas Marina circuit. Just awaiting for these 5 red lights to kick off the laps. And here we go, up to 3 lights, 4 lights, 5 red lights. And we are off, we're heading racing, and it is going to be a good start from the ISRL drivers, and that looks to be Toby's trying to split the middle off into turn 1, maybe a little bit of contact, thankfully a little bit of ghosting there from from Nick Potgetter, I think, as he loses one position, but here comes Toby's trying to push a move for the lead of the race, having to go the long way around the first section of the corner, turns into the inside. They're still side by side with F1 Richie, as they've just been battling ever since the start of this race, and here we go. It's F1 Richie leading the way down the first of straights. Toby's going side by side with Potgetter, who's getting a little bit of a slipstream from his teammate of F1 Richie going into the first chicane of 2, the hard braking zone. They're gonna go side by side, Toby's and Potgetter here. There's a little bit of contact, as I think that was Nole trying to get by, as he just hasn't been able to find that opening, maybe here through part 2 of the straight, and it looks to be a little bit of a separation. Toby kind of stuck alone, and now getting a little bit more swamp from some of these ISRL drivers, pushing Nole off the track just a tiny little bit. Elbows out, battling for position. but Nole's still there, but solid driving from Toby. He's trying to hold on as best as he can, but there we go. Nole gets the overtake done, going up into third, and we have a yellow flag through all of that. That was Dragon on Speed. Now, I didn't quite get to see what happened. Dan, what happened to Dragon on Speed? Did you catch that at all?
No, I was watching the top fight, but it seems like he's just spun the car. It doesn't seem like there's any damage on that CRL driver's chassis, but Tobes, you've got to feel for him getting completely ganged up on, really, by the ISRL drivers, and Jordan could also fancy his chances into the first couple of corners and contact between the pair of them. And it's going to allow for New Potato to go around the outside of Jordan, who's going to back off, allow him to go through. But a bit of an oversteering moment, I think, from Tobes, and Jordan just wasn't expecting it. Racing incident, I wouldn't have reported it for either of them, but New Potato batching the back of Tobes now, coming through the hairpin. He's going to be in the slipstream. He's got a considerable amount of ERS. He's lost actually quite a bit of it, but lap 2 here, no DRS has been enabled. New Potato already sub 10%. That's going to be the ERS power cut completely in half. So, he might want to maybe just let Jordan go through, then allow for him to take the fight to Tobes. But yeah, it's been a bit of a scrappy start. Really good position so far for the ISRL drivers. Of course, having that reverse grid pole position, if they can keep the result like this come the end of the Grand Prix, well, they're going to be in a really, really strong position here.
Oh, definitely, and that's the thing. Looking at the top 8 is all it's all ISRL, other than Tobes, who had a really good start, but then sort of lost that extra kick in his second step, falling down into 5th. We did see him about a lap ago or so going a little bit wide on the exit of one of the corners, which allowed Welsh Maldonado to get by to get up into 4th. But now, feeling the pressure, and right around that same corner, you see him going wide again is Tobes, which opened the door to Irish Newt Potato to try to make a move down the inside. But now Tobes just having a bit more pace off the exit going into the start-finish straight, but taking the long way around was Irish Newt Potato, pulling that move to perfection, nearly, going up into the top 5. So it is ISRL positions 1 through 5, but now Feral Fury, the last of the top 6 to try to get by, and then it is a bit of a CRL wall. Harv, Nathan, JB, Do Will in positions 8 through 10th. And I just noticed, for those trying to wonder where Suikar 19 is, all the way down in P17, as I think he might have been caught up in an incident, as he is way far behind. And I think I did see him take a pit stop on the end of lap 1, potentially having to fix a little bit of wing damage. As now Feral Fury going along side by side with Tobes does have DRS, I should say, to help him make the move. So does go up into 6th for the time being, but now with Tobes does have some support of his teammates, as now Ferg and Sophion battling it out. Sophion taking a very funky line, I think completely missing his braking point for that P11. Now Nathan JB getting overtaking Tobes. Tobes, I think, did all he could, and he's probably feeling it on those soft tires now with all of that battling, giving up a few positions to his quicker teammates. But now I think this is where we're going to start seeing CRL maybe having a little bit of their push. But crucially, F1 Richie also having some struggles through into Sector 3. We were talking about it before the race, the challenges that Sector 3 brings. And I think F1 Richie really feeling that, along with maybe some tire wear, as I'm not seeing any damages. He's now falling down the order from what was the lead of the race to start this race. And after having a good start as well, I think those tires starting to fall off, and maybe a pit stop from F1 Richie sooner rather than later to get onto the mediums.
Yeah, Richie losing a number of positions in this one has allowed for 2 CRL drivers to really leak through into the top 8, which was previously occupied by pretty much exclusively ISRL drivers. So this might be the turning point that they needed. Sofian getting up the inside of Ferg, coming in through one of 2 chicanes at the end of the DRS straight. He should no, he's not going to have DRS on the back of Tobes in front of him. So this will be advantage now back to Ferg, coming down the straightaway Sofian's going to hold the inside line coming into the braking zone. The pair of them fight together. Sofian just about outbraking himself, managing to make the corner, and has perfectly defended that from Ferg there, especially without having the DRS. Now can push to get onto the back of Tobes and pick up that 1 second window that Sofian needs to get the DRS. Really, really nice defensive manoeuvres from him there. And Ferg, well, left with his tail in between his legs. He's not going to be able to take the position this time by.
Yep, and crucially for Sofian, having a very solid Sector 3 compared to Tobes ahead of him, so is able to bring that back through into DRS range. CRL Ferg, meanwhile, he's had it on those medium tires. He's diving in for a little bit of an early pit stop, probably looking to put on, I would think, a set of soft tires, and so is his teammate Dragon on Speed, who's also taking an early pit stop off of the medium tires, trying to put on those soft tires and get some work done till the end of the race. Now, I do see Sweetcrown 19 gaining a few positions a little bit further behind, keeping up with the real DC, going to be trying to work his way up the grid, but really has a bit of a marathon drive ahead of him before he can have any chance of seeing the light of day with these lead battles, as he's been really pushing on those soft tires, but having put them on at the start of lap 2, it is a long ways to go if he is still looking to keep those soft tires for a one stop. So really his work cut out for him if that's the strategy that Sweetcrown 19 is going for. Already now up into 14th, overtaking Real DC down the first of 2 long DRS straights, but might lose out on DRS for the second straight here. Meanwhile, further up the grid, we've got some shuffling here, as that was Harv overtaking Irish Newt Potato, who's now stuck between Harv and Nathan JB in P6. So Harv now on those medium tires, I think, starting to get a little bit of an extra kick, and this might be where we're going to start seeing these medium tire runners get that extra pace, and maybe the soft tires starting to fall off. But as I say that, Potgetter, who is on the medium tires, he's taking his pit stop very early, and so are a lot of the drivers who are on the soft tires. Only Welsh Maldonado and Feral Fury, who are part of that lead pack, staying out for one more lap, as well as Harv, who can go a little bit longer on those medium tires, who's now up into 3rd, with F1 Richie and Sofian in 4th and 5th now, through the shuffle of the first stages of pit stops.
Yeah, it seems like a couple of the CRL drivers did actually get held up in all of that pit stops. I believe Tobes and Alex TG all suffered from having to double stack, which was completely out of their control. It is almost random as to where they're going to be placed in regards to that. So it is unfortunate that both those guys have had their fates, but it does benefit ISRL. They've got a lot of drivers yet to put in this race, as Noob Potato steams past Jordan. Of course, that's not really going to affect any of the points for ISRL, but Sweetcrown now, I actually have moved into almost a net race lead here. Actually, Potgeiter is in that position. He's got Do Will pushing to the back of him, especially since there's a 3-second time penalty coming the way of ISRL in Potgeiter's name. But hopefully he can maybe try and extend that gap as Nathan and DC swapping positions. Nole maybe trying to push these guys and get towards Sweetcrown and just help him defend from the back of all their positions, as Maldonado and Feral Fury both into the pit lane. Harv's going to continue on for at least one more lap, and we'll see him possibly coming in for the softs at some point in this one.
Yep, unsurprising I should say, that Harv is staying out. He can go much longer on those medium tires, but the question now for Harv is whether or not he can push long enough to create that gap and not have to force himself to make too many overtakes, as now the timing tables are getting sorted out. It is, like you mentioned, Potgetter, who's in the net lead of the race on those fresh set of soft tires, but going to have to go a bit of a long ways with them, but not as long as Duwill, who is up into a net P2 once pit stops get sorted out, but does have those soft tires on for 2 extra laps compared to Potgetter. So Potgetter does have the fresher tires, so it can potentially be a bit of an advantage for him as far as, at least in this stage of the race, or leading into the next stage, once we start seeing these battles really start to play out and once the maybe a little bit more sense of urgency is shown in the drivers in the closing laps when they're all really going to be fighting for these positions. But now, Irish New Potato, I do think he might want to be pushing as, well, now he's getting overtaken by Welsh Maldonado, who might be showing a bit more pace on her set of medium tires. Maybe a little bit of teamwork as they're all going to be trying to work together to close that gap on Du Will to bring a little bit of support to Potgieter. As now, for the net lead, it's a little bit of a two-car battle between Potgieter and Du Will up until the rest of this grid does start catching up. But they're not going to go without a fight already. Nathan JB, who's in 10th for the moment, right along the back of Jordan. And there we see Sofian and Harv going in, taking their pit stops. So Potgieter does take the lead of the race once again, as these pit stops are now completing, I should say. And I'm just looking now, Sweetcrown 19 up into 7th now. So Had did a good job on those soft tires of using that clean air to his advantage when he hadn't had to battle nearly as much. Here comes Nathan now trying to go down the inside of Jordan. I thought he was going to overshoot the exit, but gets that car slowed down in time. And Jordan now getting overtaken by Ferg. So Ferg saw the opportunity and didn't miss a beat as he just followed his teammate right down the inside, and Jordan lost out on 2 positions there. And crucially, Sweetcrown 19 now going up into P6, overtaking Harv. There was a little bit of contact in the braking there, it seemed, between the rear diffuser of Sweetcrown and Harv. But thankfully, there's no damage on either car as they just continue on. It was just a little bit of a slight contact there, it seemed. But here comes Harv now coming back down around the outside of Sweetcrown. You're seeing them going wheel to wheel. Sweetcrown just shutting the door, holding on to that P6 as now Harv is putting so much pressure. But into Sector 3, it's going to be very difficult to get these overtakes done. You're seeing Harv getting close, but just no room to slot that car. Wherever he tries to put it, Sweetcrown just shutting the door, doing a very good defending job. But Harv, at the very least, doing a solid job himself of keeping along back and not letting the dirty air affect him all that much through into Sector 3. So that way he's not losing nearly as much time as maybe he could be through that Sector 3, which is very technical and very difficult to follow behind with all of these corners. But starting lap 9, we've got these battles on circuit. Is Harv going to try again down the inside? No, he's going to stick it behind, maybe play it safe and try to get this overtake done with the help of DRS, where he can really solidify that move and get into P6. But Sweetcrown 19 doing all he can on those soft tires to keep him behind. But it looks as though now coming down the inside, long ways to go before the corner. It is Harv who does get the overtake done. Sweetcrown falling down into 7th. And now going to have to watch out for Ferg, who's right behind, but might be trying to make a push back on Harv with the help of DRS, as now Sweetcrown gets the bite of DRS Cherry, closing right back up, but not close enough, I don't think, to get the overtake done into the next corner section.
Yeah, some really good defensive manoeuvres from Sweetcrown in that battle, but those fresher soft tyres just coming completely towards the advantage of Harv. And now Ferg on the pressure compound of soft tyres. You saw these guys fighting it out in the final couple of laps in Britain, and now they're fighting it out for a little bit of low motion in Abu Dhabi. So history really does repeat itself like a ripple. It's worth mentioning that one of the pit stops coming up from Sofian actually saw him picking up wing damage on the entry. He just oversteered the car and then hit the inside wall, losing his end plate, as he did have to get that wing fixed in the end. No DRS towards turn number 1, but Ferg right onto the back of Sweetcrown has already lost DRS, and he's actually lost 2 seconds to Harv, who's really making a charge on this fresher set of soft compound of tyres. But Ferg onto the back of Sweetcrown, he's going to have DRS for this really, really long straight at the end of, well, in the middle part of the second sector. So the DRS doesn't come till around about just at the Armco here, and there it is, DRS open for Ferg. And now coming down the straightaway, Sweetcrown going to slightly defend this one actually, and he might still be alongside him into the braking zone. Going to not be close enough to fight this one out, but possibly on the exit if he can secure the better run, which he hasn't done, unfortunately. He has got DRS, so it is not over for the fight between the pair of them. And I think Sweet Crown, he might be trying to go to the outside line here. He's going to have the momentum on that right hand, and he's going to have the inside line for the second part of the corner. They bang wheels, they make a little bit of contact. Ferg slamming the door shut, and he manages to defend that position off of Sweet Crown, who tried to fight him back. Sweet Crown he's having a really aggressive race in this one, but he's unfortunately not been able to keep that position. About to come on to lap 11 of 14, so the dying laps of this race are beginning to set in, and Harvard, he's found himself right into the back of the train that is stemming to about third position, so a podium could be on for Harv by the end of this race, provided that he does overtake these guys. As the great Murray Walker did say, one thing to catch a car, and it is a whole other thing to overtake.
Oh, very much is the case, especially here around Abu Dhabi. But Harv's showing a lot of pace with those fresher soft tires, and I do think, as far as Sweet Crown 19 is concerned, once Ferg did get ahead, he put up a very solid job battling, picking things up right where they left off in Silverstone just one race ago. But now you're seeing Sweet Crown now just one lap later out of the DRS range of Ferg, and having to focus a little bit more on Nathan, who's now catching up at a rate of knots behind on those medium tires. Harv, meanwhile, does get past Irish Newt Potato. So Irish Newt Potato down into 6th now, does have DRS to try to close back up, but crucially so does Harv on Welsh Maldonado, who's right ahead. But I think we're going to have to start seeing a little bit of defending work from the ISRL drivers here, trying to defend the lead. Sweet Crown and Nathan are now going side by side through the chicane section here. We've got, who was that went off? That was actually Sweet Crown. Excuse me, I was looking at, I think it was Nole that I was looking at going side by side, as I think there was some contact between Sweet Crown and Nathan. I think we saw that just briefly on the stream. But now right back on track side by side with Dragon on speed is Sweet Crown 19. But I think those soft tires are really starting to feel that tire wear. Very difficult to take them longer than 5 laps in a 25% race. Or sorry, longer than I guess I could say 6 laps or so, having to battle the way he is. But I do think, like I said, those soft tires are just starting to scream at Sweet Crown 19 a little bit more, which is where this pace is being lost and potentially could have been a factor in that half spin. But at least there was no damage, so it's just a few positions lost, but not another pit stop. But here on lap 12, here comes Harv trying to put some pressure on Welsh Maldonado. Welsh Maldonado showing some similar pace as they're getting a little bit of a toe on Feral Fury. Here comes Harv trying to go right down the inside of possibly both drivers, but that door just does completely close, so we'll be staying in 5th. And that's Irish Newt Potato out of the race, as you see him on your screen there. It's a yellow flag in Sector 2. I think losing the back end on the exit of that corner and running into the wall. There's not much runoff there on the exit, and unfortunately for Irish Newt Potato, that was a very solid top 10 running. That's going to turn into a P18 and DNF for the ISRL drivers. So really not what he was hoping for this late in the race, and that's potentially some points left on the table for race 2 for ISRL. And I'm sure Newt Potato is probably kicking himself a little bit after that. What could have proved to be a very costly mistake as far as the championship rankings are concerned in this league versus league event.
Yeah, at this point it's looking advantage could be going towards CRL, unfortunately, as both Feral Fury and Potgaiter are going to lose positions due to their penalties, which will promote both Harv and will most likely take the win of this Grand Prix, provided he can stay within that 3-second window of Potgaiter, or not pick up a penalty for ISRL's sake. They'll be praying that he just exceeds the track limit at some point. I'd assume he'd be a little bit more careful going into the end of this race, though. If he does have 2 warnings, it might be smart of Feral Fury to maybe let by Welsh Maldonado and then just hang him back for the time being, or possibly getting Welsh Maldonado to just ease off a bit and allow for Harv to lose a bit of time in comparison, but it doesn't seem like they want to take that risk. So it seems like Harv will be making up at least one position by the end of it. But Potgieter, he's done a really good job considering his performance in Britain. Not good. He's got one more lap to complete in this race, and he's just losing a little bit of time to Will, which will actually give Will the DRS, coming through the back-to-back DRS straights at the in the second sector. But it's been a really good performance from the ISRL driver, so I think he's got something to be proud about today.
Definitely leading the way for just about, just about every lap that he could be, other than the pit stop window. But always in the net lead of the race is Potgieter. And other than the one mistake, exceeding those track limits with the penalty, has driven a very solid race here in race 2. A very good bounce back race from the ISRL driver after the I'll be honest, the forgetful race 1 that he had. But still, Will doing a good job keeping up. I know a lot of the ISRL drivers are hoping for a penalty, but we're kind of hoping a lot for here as we're on the final lap. But Will still a second behind Potgieter, and hasn't really shown missing out on a step, I should say, with those slightly more worn soft tires, running on 9 laps old. So Will haven't done a good job preserving his tires. But meanwhile, Harv is still stuck behind Welsh Maldonado and Feral Fury. So they've been doing a good job defending. But crucially, watching on stream, you might have seen Welsh Maldonado and Feral Fury, as now Harv is trying to get a move done onto the final in the final lap. Does get past Welsh Maldonado, as I think between herself and Feral Fury, maybe battling amongst themselves a little bit too much. Not necessarily working as a team as much as they could have, and trying to keep Harv behind. Maybe they were trying the two-person wall, so that way Harv had nowhere to go. But Harv now into sector 3 of the final few corners, is in 5th or 4th now. Will takes the victory of race 2 on penalties, and it is Harv who gets the podium after penalties. Feral Fury in 4th, Welsh Maldonado down in 5th, with Ferg in 6th, Nathan JB in 7th, and it looks to be Nole in 8th, the real DC in 9th, and AJ Wuhan rounding out the top 10. So a little bit more of an even race here as far as Abu Dhabi was concerned for the League versus League event, but it is CRL getting positions 1 through 3, with ISRL's Nick Potgieter getting P2 for race 2 for your podium here at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix for race 2.
Yep, so it was a very well fought bout between both leagues, and I think they'll all be very happy with their performances. I think they're all just giving themselves a congratulations and the GGs in the Discord chat. So that's very nice to see all of them really being sportsmanlike about it. But that is bringing to an end of this event. It is a 2 wins for the CRL team. But of course, ISRL did pick up podiums here and there, so they did fight very, very hard. But it is CRL on top in both races. A little bit more even here in Abu Dhabi, as you said, though.
Yep, it was a bit of a CRL sweep in terms of the race victors, but if we're looking for a little bit of consolidation as far as the total podiums were concerned, I think we were at least tied with that. As ISRL did have 2 podiums in race 1, so it's 3 and 3 on the podium. But here for race 2, Will takes the victory, Potgieter in 2nd, Harv in 3rd, Feral Fury in 4th, Welsh Maldonado rounds out the top 5, with Ferg in 6th, Nathan JB in 7th, Nole in 8th, the real DC in 9th, and AJ Wuhan rounding out the top 10. So Fion in 11th, Alex TG in 12th, Jordan in 13th, F1 Richie in 14th, Dragon on Speed rounding out the top 15, with Sweet Crown 19 in 16th, Tobes in 17th, and Irish Newt Potato crashing out a few laps to the end of the race, coming in P18. But I think that is, like you mentioned, just about going to do it here for us for this League versus League event. And I'm just going to check in, Dan, any closing words before we wrap up the stream here today?
Yeah, I'd just like to give a big thank you for me being allowed to be here today. It was a great experience to commentate over this really, really fun event. And yeah, I'd like to also thank just Ix for reaching out to me and allowing me to be here. So thank you to all the ISRL guys. Well done to the CRL drivers too. But yeah, it was a great experience to be here.
Yeah, very happy to have you here as well. It was fantastic getting to commentate alongside you here in the booth. But that is just about going to do it here for the ISRL versus CRL League versus League event. So thank you so much, everybody, for watching. I hope you all enjoyed the races as much as we did here in the commentators booth. But on behalf of Dan, myself, Fallen Monkeys, and everybody here at ISRL Esports and CRL, of course, thank you so much for watching, and have yourselves a fantastic evening.